welcome back to my dark little corner of the internet. So the other night I was watching an old black and white horror film. Nothing new there. There's something about those earlier films, the shadows, the atmosphere, the drama, that captures me in a way that very few modern movies do. I don't know, maybe it's because I've always been a bit of an old soul. I love vintage fashion, classic cinema, antique furniture. There's just a kind of style and character in those things that feels timeless. You know, sometimes I wonder what it would have been like to live in one of those other earlier decades instead of feeling a little like I don't quite fit into this one. And that got me thinking, if I had been born in another decade, which one would I truly belong in? And if I were living then, would I still be an actress? Would I still be working in horror? The term Scream Queen may have been coined in the 1970s, but women have been facing monsters on screen for over a century. So today we're taking a journey through the decades from the silent terror of the 1920s to the present day to see how the Scream Queen has evolved.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
We're kicking off in the 1920s with the silent film era. Back then, screams weren't something you heard, they were something you saw. The early horror heroines didn't rely on sound or gore, they relied on presence, on posture, on pure committed performance. The Scream Queen of the 1920s terrified audience without ever making a single audible scream. Terror lived in their eyes, their trembling hands, every frantic glance, every exaggerated gesture became a scream in itself. Performance had to be physical, expressive, choreographed, almost like a ballet. In Nosferatu, Greta Schroeder's Ellen isn't just frightened, she's ethereal, almost ghost-like. Her fear feels tragic and romantic, wrapped in shadow and candlelight. She doesn't shriek the way we expect today. Instead, her wide-eyed stillness and rigid posture tells the audience everything. And in the cabinet of Dr. Caligari, Lil Dagover moves through those distorted expressionist sets like she's trapped inside a nightmare painting. The world itself feels unstable. Sharp angles, twisted shadows, and her terror become part of that surreal landscape. Outside the cinema, the 1920s were a time of contrast. Prohibition had the country sneaking cocktails in speakeasies, jazz clubs were alive with energy, and flapper girls danced defiantly in short skirts and bobbed hair. The world felt both thrilling and dangerous, a mix of glamour, risk, and rebellion. Silent horror films captured that tension perfectly. Elegance and fear, style and dread, all wrapped in one mesmerizing performance. By the 1930s, horror had fully embraced the Gothic, and the arrival of the talkies changed everything. Sound allowed filmmakers to blend dialogue gasps and subtle vocal screams into their performance, giving a new dimension to terror. Suddenly, the Scream Queen wasn't just expressive with her eyes and body, her voice became part of the horror. Universal horror dominated the decade, producing a string of Gothic classics that defined what horror could be on screen. It was in these films that the Scream Queen fully came into her own. In Dracula, Helen Chandler's Mina Harker is delicate yet composed. Her terror rises in soft gasps and whispered pleas, perfectly suited to the shadowy, candlelit Gothic world. She doesn't scream wildly, her fear is refined, a whisper of panic that draws the audience in.
And then I saw two red eyes staring at me, and a white, livid face came down out of the mist. It came closer and closer. I felt its breath on my face, and its lips.
The Mummy gave Zita Johann the chance to blend poise with horror as Helen Grosvenor. Her performance is elegant, controlled, and magnetic. The dread builds in her voice, in her posture, in every careful glance. Unlike later Scream Queens who might rely on sheer panic, Johann's terror feels psychological, a perfect match for the eerie tomb-like sets and ancient curses surrounding her.
Let me go! Let me go! Don't kill me! I'm a priestess of Isis. Save me from that mummy!
And then there's Elsa Lanchester in Bride of Frankenstein, where the Scream Queen becomes the monster. Her iconic look and electrifying performance turned her into both terrifying and tragic. The bride doesn't react to fear, she embodies it, and her presence flips the traditional Scream Queen role on its head. She's a creature of horror in her own right, unforgettable and haunting.
Friend? Friend?
But outside Universal, other Scream Queens were making names for themselves. Fay Wray in King Kong becomes the definitive Scream Queen for audiences worldwide, combining vulnerability, charm, and magnetic screen presence. Her screams, high-pitched, urgent, and perfectly timed, established the blueprint for every Scream Queen to come. And then there was Maylin Nurmi, who rose to fame slightly later with her vampire persona. Her dark, glamorous aesthetic and vampish performance style already hinted at a different side of the Scream Queen, one that was mysterious, seductive, and rooted in horror's more gothic theatrical traditions. What a decade for the Scream Queen! Away from the silver screen, the 1930s were a decade of economic hardship and social change. The Great Depression shaped lives worldwide, and audiences sought escapism in these dark, glamorous worlds. The new sound films offered them not only visual drama, but vocal tension, and the Scream Queens of this era delivered it all: elegance, fear, and unforgettable presence. The 1940s brought horror into a darker, more psychological space. Horror noir. Fear moved into the shadows and terror became more about suggestion than spectacle. The Scream Queen of this era was clever, cautious, and terrified without overacting. Her horror was implied, not shouted. In The Wolfman, Evelyn Ankers portrays Gwen Conliffe with the perfect balance of poise and panic. She navigates looming danger with intelligence and caution, often reacting to what she senses rather than what she sees. Her subtle gasps and careful movements heighten the tension, showing that horror doesn't always need to be loud to be effective.
Larry, what is it?
Your hand.
Can't see anything.
In Cat People, Simone Simon plays Irina, a woman whose terror is quiet, intimate, and simmering. The suspense builds around her rather than the monster, and every glance, gesture, and fearful pause conveys more dread than any scream could. Outside the cinema, the 1940s were dominated by World War II and its aftermath. Uncertainty, fear, and the sense of a changing world seeped into popular culture. Horror films mirrored this tension. Shadows were deeper, silence was louder, and the Scream Queen became a figure who could embody both vulnerability and resilience. Horror noir demanded sophistication, terror that was felt in the mind as much as in the body. It was subtle, psychological, and compelling. The 1950s brought monsters, and with them a new kind of Scream Queen. Sci-fi and creature features dominated the decade, blending horror, science fiction, and adventure. In Creature from the Black Lagoon, Julie Adams as Kay Lawrence combines elegance with athleticism, running, swimming, and occasionally fighting back against the mysterious Gillman. Her screams are louder, more panicked, but they carry power. She's actively part of the suspense, not just a passive victim.
Hey! You got it! You got it! No, don't shoot! Don't shoot! Puppy, you might hit Kay.
And in The Wasp Woman, Susan Cabot faces horror on an entirely different level. A woman transformed by science, both terrifying and sympathetic. Her scream is intertwined with rage, fear, and desperation, showing that the Scream Queen can also be the monster. A theme that echoes from Elsa Lanchester's Bride of Frankenstein a few decades earlier.
Who could possibly want to hurt Mr. Coop?
I don't know. It's not only Mr. Cooper. What about...
These films reflected a post-war fascination with science, experimentation, and the unknown. The 1950s audience craved spectacle, and the Scream Queen evolved alongside it, more physical, more daring, and more central to the story. Horror became bigger, louder, and more action-driven, and the Scream Queen was at the heart of every thrilling chase, underwater encounter, and transformative nightmare. The 1960s were a decade of change, socially, culturally, and cinematically. Post-war optimism, youth-driven rebellion, the rise of feminism, and a fascination with the mysterious and forbidden shaped the world. Horror reflected these shifts, becoming more stylish, psychological, and daring, while Hammer horror and Alfred Hitchcock were leading the way. Across the Atlantic, Alfred Hitchcock was redefining horror. In Psycho, Janet Leigh delivered a visceral performance. The iconic shower scene made terror intimate and raw. The horror lived as much in her reactions as in the threat itself. In The Birds, Tippi Hedren faced a completely different kind of menace. Nature turned sinister. Her performance combined vulnerability and resilience as she confronted flocks of attacking birds. Hitchcock's focus on her reactions made the suspense personal and immersive, proving that Scream Queens could carry a story entirely through presence, emotion, and expression. In The Reptile, Jacqueline Pearce brought sophistication and intensity to her role. Facing a monstrous, venomous threat, her terror was physical and psychological, demonstrating Hammer's signature combination of camp, style, and suspense. Pearce's clever, expressive, and fully terrifying performance exemplifies the evolution of the 1960s Scream Queen. By the end of the 1960s, the Scream Queen had become glamorous, bold, and captivating. Whether fleeing witches, reptiles, or birds, or facing human-made terror, she combined elegance, charisma, and fear, solidifying an archetype that would continue to evolve and influence horror for decades to come. By the 70s, Hammer horror was no longer the powerhouse it had been in previous decades. Audiences were gravitating toward bloodier, more explicit films, including American slashers and exploitation horror, and Hammer had to adapt. The studio's gothic roots remained, but their films became more erotic, sensational, and some, not me, would say lowbrow, trading some of the subtle atmosphere of the 60s for overt spectacle. Ingrid Pitt became one of the decade's defining Scream Queens through this period of change. In films like The Vampire Lovers and Countess Dracula, Pitt blended fear, glamour, and seduction, creating a magnetic, unforgettable presence on screen. Her performances showed that Scream Queens could be terrifying, alluring, and central to the story, perfectly embodying Hammer's attempt to stay relevant in a rapidly evolving horror landscape. The 1970s were a time of change and experimentation, social movements, shifting gender roles, and a youth culture eager to challenge tradition shaped society and art. Horror reflected that energy, becoming raw, daring, and increasingly intense. Exploitation films and early slashers pushed boundaries, and the Scream Queen emerged as a central figure, the final girl. In Halloween, Jamie Lee Curtis became the definitive final girl as Laurie Strode. Her intelligence, resourcefulness, and courage transformed the Scream Queen from passive victim to active survivor. Every scream, gasp, and escape attempt carried realism and intensity. Brian De Palma's Carrie features Sissy Spacek as a psychologically complex final girl. Her terror blends vulnerability and supernatural dread, culminating in the film's iconic climax. Spacek showed that screams could carry emotional depth, turning fear into both personal and unforgettable cinema. Ridley Scott's Alien introduced a new type of scream queen for the sci-fi horror era. Veronica Cartwright played an anxious, intelligent crew member whose terror is constant and believable, while Sigourney Weaver's Ellen Ripley redefined the final girl, smart, resourceful, and physically and mentally resilient. Ripley's screams are measured but real, and her actions drive the story.
Unless somebody has got a better idea, we'll proceed with Dallas's plan.
What? And end up like the others? No, you're out of your mind.
You got a better idea?
Yes. I say that we abandon the ship. We get the shuttle and just get the hell out of here. We take our chances and just hope that somebody
Lambert.
picks us up.
The shuttle won't take 4.
By the end of the 1970s, the Scream Queen had fully evolved. She was clever, brave, emotional, and central to the narrative. Exploitation films, early slashers, and the cultural climate of the decade gave rise to characters who weren't just surviving horror. They defined it. The 80s were a decade of excess, neon, and bold self-expression. Pop culture was loud, youth culture rebellious, and horror films reflected that energy. Teen freedom, emerging consumerism, and a fascination with danger and spectacle shaped the cinema of the era. Horror became flashier, bloodier, and more glamorous, and the Scream Queen evolved into someone both terrifying and stylish. In Friday the 13th, Adrienne King became one of the definitive final girls of the decade. As Alice, she balanced vulnerability with cleverness. Navigating the chaos of Camp Crystal Lake, her screams were high-pitched, sustained, and perfectly timed to ramp up tension. But she also outsmarted her killer in the climax, showing that the final girl could survive through brains as well as bravery. King's performance set the standard for many Scream Queens to come.
Bill!
A Nightmare on Elm Street introduced Heather Langenkamp as Nancy Thompson, a more modern final girl for the 1980s. Nancy's terror was intense but believable. She also fought back against Freddy Krueger with strategy and determination. Langenkamp's performance blended wide-eyed fear, dramatic expressions, and emotional depth, creating iconic Scream Queen moments that are still referenced today. The film itself reflected a growing fascination with nightmares, surreal horror, and the anxieties of suburban teen life, making Nancy both relatable and heroic. By the mid-1980s, the Scream Queen had fully embraced this new era. Glamorous, expressive, and capable, she could carry a film with her presence alone. Glamour met gore, wide-eyed terror became iconic, and the final girl emerged as someone strong, resourceful, and unforgettable, screaming her lungs out while taking control of her own survival. Winona Ryder also emerged in the 1980s as a different kind of Scream Queen, one who blended gothic style, dark humor, and teen angst with horror-adjacent performances. In Tim Burton's Beetlejuice, she played Lydia Deetz, a brooding goth who navigates the supernatural chaos of the Maitland's haunted house. Her fear is subtle, expressive, and laced with dry wit, showing that screams could be internalized and stylish rather than overt.
No feet. Are you the guys hiding out in the attic?
We're ghosts.
What do you look like under there?
Aren't you scared?
I'm not scared of sheets. Are you gross under there? Are you Night of the Living Dead under there?
Ryder's performance in dark, violent satire Heathers placed her in a twisted, suspenseful world, cementing her status as a teen scream queen for the decade. Clever, edgy, and unforgettable.
Veronica, you look like hell.
Yeah, I just got back.
Veronica, what are you doing?
Heather, my love, there's a new sheriff in town.
And of course, not forgetting 80s horror hostess with the mostess, Cassandra Peterson, who carved out her own unique niche as Scream Queen Elvira. With her vampy-style dark wit and campy humour, Elvira became an 80s icon, hosting horror movie marathons and starring in Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Peterson's performances blended comedic timing with horror theatrics, showing that Scream Queens could be clever, playful, and in charge of their own terror-filmed worlds. Her mix of glamour, horror, and irreverence made her unforgettable, a true emblem of the 1980s horror culture.
Elvira.
Hello, darling. It's me again, yours truly, Elvira, the gal with the enormous, ratings.
The 90s brought a resurgence of the slasher film, a revival that was self-aware, stylish, and full of clever twists. The rise of teen culture and a fascination with media and celebrity shaped the decade's horror. Filmmakers combined classic slasher tropes with witty dialogue, pop culture references, and strong, intelligent heroines. The Scream Queen had evolved once again. In Scream, Neve Campbell's Sidney Prescott became the defining final girl of the decade. Sydney's terror was palpable and relatable, but she also fought back with strategy and courage. Campbell balanced vulnerability and strength, creating a heroine audiences rooted for. Her fear, clever improvisation, and emotional depth set the new benchmark for Scream Queens. Jennifer Love Hewitt starred in I Know What You Did Last Summer, bringing a mix of vulnerability, charm, and determination to her role. Her performance emphasized fear and suspense, and her screams and reactions kept audiences on edge while maintaining a strong, relatable heroine presence.
Don't you see? He's got us now. Okay, this is exactly what he wants. We can't go to the police, not now. He's made sure of that. He's just out there and he's watching us and waiting. What are you waiting for, huh?
Sarah Michelle Gellar, with her portrayal of Buffy in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, cemented her status as a Scream Queen icon. Buffy combined terror, heroism, and empowerment, battling vampires and monsters while still grappling with teenage life.
No, those weren't vampires. Those were just guys in thunder need of a facial. Or maybe they had rabies. It could have been rabies. And that guy turning to dust, just a trick of light. That's exactly what I said the first time I saw a vampire. Well, after I was done with the screaming part.
In The Craft, Fairuza Balk demonstrated another facet of the Scream Queen, dark, edgy, and empowered. Though not a traditional slasher, her performances captured teenage angst, supernatural terror, and emotional intensity, influencing how horror could mix style, attitude, and fear into a compelling female lead.
What's going on?
Why aren't you dead? You came to me. Saved me. Oh, and he wanted me to give you a message. You're in deep shit. He says you've abused what he's given you, and now you're gonna have to pay the price.
Did he?
He did. By the way, what happened to Rochelle and Bonnie? They rushed out of here without even saying goodbye. It's bad manners.
What is going on? Stop it! Stop it!
By the end of the 90s, the slasher revival had firmly cemented a new type of scream queen. Intelligent, stylish, and capable of carrying a film or TV series through terror, wit, and emotional depth. Glamour, cleverness, and screams blended perfectly. The 2000s saw horror split into extremes: brutal torture porn, intense slasher thrillers, and slow-burn psychological terror. Indie films and new special effects allowed filmmakers to experiment with fear in ways audiences had never seen. The Scream Queen evolved, intelligent, resilient, central to the story, and capable of carrying extreme horror with emotional depth and style. Ali Larter became one of the naughty standout Scream Queens with her fearless performances in both supernatural and slasher horror. In House on Haunted Hill, she navigated a creepy trap-filled mansion with a mix of wit, tension, and genuine fear, establishing her ability to carry a horror narrative.
What are you doing?
What the hell are you doing?
But she cemented her Scream Queen status with the Final Destination series, where characters faced relentless and inventive deaths. James Wan Saw introduced a new kind of fear, calculated, gruesome, and high stakes. Shawnee Smith's Amanda brought intensity and strategic thinking to her role. Her screams weren't just reactions. They conveyed terror, heartbreak, and survival instinct, modernizing the Scream Queen for an era of extreme horror. Christina Ricci began her career as a child actress, memorable for her gothic charm in The Addams Family, Addams Family Values, and Casper. While these roles showcased her dark, quirky persona, it was in the early 2000s that she truly cemented her Scream Queen status. In Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow, Ricci brought vulnerability, gothic elegance, and emotional depth to Katrina Van Tassel. She continued this evolution in Wes Craven's Cursed, a horror comedy where she faced werewolf terror with a mix of courage, wit, and authentic fear.
You're playing with us, aren't you, Joni?
Ellie!
We'll play it!
These performances transformed Ricci from a beloved gothic child star into a fully realised scream queen, capable of holding her own. In Paranormal Activity, Katie Featherston demonstrated that subtle, slow burn terror could be just as effective. Her fear was intimate and grounded, proving that screams didn't always need gore to be terrifying. Megan Fox and Jennifer's Body brought a different energy, a darkly empowered, edgy scream queen. Balancing horror with camp allure and supernatural danger, Fox's performance showcased the flexibility of the archetype, proving scream queens could be both terrifying and charismatic in the same moment.
You made it.
This isn't really your house, is it?
No, baby. This is our house. Just for you and me. You can play mommy and daddy.
No way.
I need you frightened. I need you hopeless.
By the end of the noughties, scream queens had evolved into multi-dimensional heroines. Horror had become more extreme, nuanced, and experimental, and the women who carried these films were unforgettable. Fearless, iconic, and ready to scream at a moment's notice. The 2010s brought a new wave of horror, slow burn, psychological, and stylistically daring. Folk horror flourished, filmmakers experimented with tension, and horror became as much about mood and atmosphere as it was about gore. The Scream Queen evolved once again. She could be subtle, stylish, unflinching, and deeply compelling. Emma Roberts solidified her Scream Queen status through the 2010s, proving her range across slasher, anthology, and comedy horror. She starred in Scream 4, joining the iconic franchise and holding her own alongside veterans like Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox, delivering wit, intelligence, and classic final girl terror. Roberts further showcased her versatility on American Horror Story, navigating dark, twisted narratives filled with psychological terror, supernatural elements, and gore.
I want you to know, in your bones, you did this, you selfish, evil whore!
Then came Scream Queens, a horror comedy series where Roberts played Chanel, combining camp, fear, and comedic timing to create a uniquely modern Scream Queen persona. Anna Taylor-Joy in The Witch conveyed fear, isolation, and growing tension in Puritan-era horror. Her wide-eyed expressions, controlled screams, and emotional nuance made her an instant Scream Queen icon, demonstrating that horror can be psychological, literary, and deeply affecting. Samara Weaving in Ready or Not brought wit, fear, and resilience to her final girl role. Her performance combined dark humour, cleverness, and real terror, proving that modern Scream Queens could be charismatic, intelligent, and physically active whilst facing extreme horror.
Ma'am, are you okay? Can you hear me? I've got someone on the south lawn. We need paramedics over here right away.
Copy that.
Jesus Christ. What happened to you?
In-laws.
In Midsummer, Florence Pugh portrayed Dani, a heroine navigating grief, dread, and daylight terror. Pugh's performance captured vulnerability, escalating panic, and complex emotional depth. Her terror is drawn out and atmospheric, proving that the modern Scream Queen can thrive in slow burn horror while still commanding the screen. By the end of the 2010s, the Scream Queen had become a versatile, multifaceted figure. She could face supernatural horror, psychological dread, or surreal nightmares. The archetype continued to evolve, stronger, smarter, and more memorable than ever. The 2020s have become a golden era for horror and Scream Queens. Streaming platforms, franchise revivals, and indie horror experimentation have brought both classic slasher thrills and slow-burn psychological terror to a global audience. The decade blends nostalgia with fresh talent, giving rise to a new generation of Scream Queens while celebrating the return of familiar faces. Jenna Ortega has become one of the decade's defining Scream Queens. In Scream 5, she stepped into the franchise as the smart, fearless new final girl, perfectly blending wit, courage, and terror.
Bonus question, Tara.
Please stop.
Do you think I made it inside your house before you could rearm?
She also starred as Wednesday Addams in Wednesday, showing that modern scream queens can dominate both film and streaming series, while balancing gothic style with suspense and clever humour.
They couldn't even spring for real pig's blood. It's only pain.
The 2020s also celebrated the slasher revival, with reboots of I Know What You Did Last Summer and another Scream movie coming up. These films brought back franchise favourites while introducing new actresses as Scream queens, giving young performers the chance to shine in modern horror. In the newest iteration of I Know What You Did Last Summer, Madeline Klein emerges as a fresh Scream queen for a new generation. Klein channels both vulnerability and resilience, embodying the classic Final Girl energy while updating it with contemporary edge and emotional depth.
You like bitch! That's for my fiancé! Which one?
Legacy actors returning for sequels like Neve Campbell in Scream and Jennifer Love Hewitt and Sarah Michelle Gellar in I Know What You Did Last Summer link the past and present, emphasizing the continuity of the Scream Queen archetype.
What are you waiting for, huh?
This is gonna hurt, sweetheart.
What are you waiting for?
Careful, sweetheart. I have the hook.
Meanwhile, Heart Eyes leaned fully into the glossy 90s-esque slasher aesthetic, blending Valentine's Day romance with stalk and slash thrills. The film embraces neon lighting, self-aware humour, and a masked killer gimmick reminiscent of the late 90s cult favourites. Its stylized violence, attractive ensemble cast, and playful tone echo the post-Scream era of teen horror, where scares and satire intertwine. Olivia Holt stepped confidently into the role of Allie, embodying a modern final girl with echoes of the 90s horror heroines. Today's Scream Queens are diverse, fearless and central, navigating everything from nostalgic slasher thrills to slow burn surreal horror. With returning icons and emerging stars, the Scream Queen archetype continues to evolve, stronger and more memorable than ever. Truly, this is a great time to be alive for fans of fear, suspense and iconic Scream Queens. So looking back across the decades, I have to admit, I have a soft spot for the old Universal horror films of the 1930s, the black and white gothic style, the dramatic shadows, the elegance of the actresses. It's just timeless. But then I adore the fashion of the 40s and 50s, the hairstyles, the dresses, the glamour. It's just also classic. And then the Hammer films of the 60s and 70s. I love them too. Though funnily enough, 60s fashion has never really been my favourite. But I do wonder what it would have been like to be on contract back then as part of the Hammer Studio system, performing in all those gothic horrors with the incredible sets. But then I think about being a teen in the late 90s and I have to smile because the late 90s, early noughties horror is my absolute favourite. The slasher, the meta films, the thrill of the final girl is the era I feel most at home in. And don't forget, the 90s also had the Spice Girls. Every decade has its charms, its Scream Queens and its style. but for me there's nothing quite like the mix of nostalgia, clever horror and fearless heroines from the turn of the millennium. Of course, there are so many more incredible scream queens that I haven't included, but this was just a glimpse of some of the most iconic through the decades. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment below. I'd love to hear which decade is your favourite or what you'd like to see me cover in future videos. Until next time.